The first human to ever stand upon the rim of the periphery arc did not know she had arrived at the edge of legend. Her name was Morena Vance, a surveyor with a sharpened will and a stubborn refusal to accept the limits others insisted she obey. She stood in the observation cradle of the exploration vessel Resolute Fortune, her eyes locked firmly upon the stellar mural ahead. It was not a spectacular view at first glance. No radiant nebulae, no blazing birth clouds of young blue stars, no supergiant flaunting titanic radiance. The periphery arc was dim, sparse. A stretch of space cosmographers had marked as unremarkable in every survey since the earliest days of interstellar mapping. Yet Morena felt a pressure behind her ribs, as if she was staring at something significant, some whisper poised just beyond perception. The vessel hummed behind her, a breathing giant of metal, shielding her and her crew from the hundreds of degrees of freezing emptiness outside, and yet that humming felt too small for the moment. It felt mundane compared to the quiet gravity settling upon her shoulders. She was not a person prone to unfounded apprehension, nor one who romanticized the unknown. Her record was one of precision, logic, and calculated observation. Still, she could not shake the sense that the space she gazed upon did not want to be ignored. She had not slept well in 3 ship nights. Her dreams had grown knotty, threaded with images she had never seen in waking life, orbiting rings of obsidian stones sweeping around dark worlds, cities that glimmered like the edges of knives, a colossal structure shaped like a rising arc cutting across a starless void. She dismissed them every morning, the way disciplined minds dismiss the absurd. Dream thoughts were the brain processing tension. The crew was tense. The Expedition Funding Committee had doubted them. Leadership on the ship had qualms about venturing into a region dismissed for centuries as void and dust. She reasoned her dreams came from these anxieties. Yet standing here, seeing this dim curtain of stars, she felt, in some deep inner corridor of her mind, that perhaps it was the dreams calling her, or warning her. Her second-in-command, Javan Toran, stepped into the cradle with the quiet efficiency of someone raised in half-gravity habitats where noise traveled strangely. He carried the look of a man who had spent too much time reading telemetry data and not enough time remembering to blink. Morena, he said in full, because she had instructed everyone years ago not to shorten her name to anything convenient. We are receiving the final batch of deep sweep sensor returns from the forward array. They are odd. He hesitated. Javan was not a man who hesitated. He chose words with care sharper than any blade. He had measured this pause. She turned from the viewport, seizing the closest surface of purpose to anchor herself. Odd how? She asked. He extended a data pad. There is structural alignment in the dust, not natural lattice alignment, but orientation, as though gravitational fields shaped by something artificial passed through here recently. Morena frowned. Recently as in, within the last few centuries, he replied. Centuries, she felt a flicker of intrigue. Space was vast beyond human comprehension. Centuries were a blink. We have never surveyed this region thoroughly. Why would something artificial pass through here? Javan shook his head. No signatures remain. Whatever passed left only the imprint, a faint pattern of compression. She took the data pad, scrolling through the data. The dust did not bow in random smoothing patterns like the wake of meteoroids or drifting planetoids. Instead, the alignment mimicked the curvature of something massive, smooth, and intentional. A vessel, a habitat arc, something even larger. She felt that same dream thread tug at the back of her mind. We will proceed, she said at last. The periphery arc is not empty. Something was here. Something shaped this region. Understood, Javan replied. I will update the crew. He turned crisply and left her alone with the stars again. She stayed at the viewport, absorbing every faint shimmer of distant points of light as though they hid messages. The periphery arc stretched across the forward horizon like a band of thin, silver tears against the deeper black. Something had passed through this region centuries ago, but the cosmic timeline dwarfed humanity's existence so thoroughly that centuries felt like fresh footprints in wet soil. She touched her gloved hand to the transparent alloy barrier and whispered, "Why here? Why now?" But the stars offered no answer. By the time she returned to the command deck, the vessel had shifted to long-range drift speed, conserving fuel while sharpening the forward sensors. The Resolute Fortune was an aging exploration vessel, but beautifully maintained, its internal panels polished by decades of respectful crews. Every workstation bore the marks of personal touches, engraved trinkets, preserved tokens, handwritten notes about calibration quirks. Human explorers left pieces of themselves behind everywhere they traveled, even inside their own ships. The navigation dais shimmered with readouts, updated in real time by the ship's core intelligence, a synthetic mind whose voice resembled wind running through long metal pipes. Morena Vance, the synthetic voice intoned, forward sensors detect periodic fluctuations in radiation emissions ahead. "What type?" she asked. "Unclassified, not stellar, not mechanical. Not consistent with energy discharge from known technology. Range, 5 million kilometers and closing. Increase magnification." The central display expanded the starfield until it felt as though she floated within it. Deep within the grainy dark of the periphery arc, a smear of unnatural color wavered, pale blue, flickering like the luminescence of deep ocean creatures replying to each other in darkness. The image sharpened. The smear became a thread. The thread became a crease. Then the crease split open into a vast, curved structure, reflecting light in ways impossible for any natural object. Javen froze at the display. "That is no debris field." "No," Morena murmured, "it is not." The structure resembled the inner curve of a titanic ring, dozens of kilometers wide. Light skittered across its surface as though through scales, but the scale pattern was too geometric, too evenly spaced. They looked more like overlapping plates, segments of a megastructure whose full form the dark of the region concealed. "We have a contact," she said quietly, "a discovery, a real one." Engines hummed to life as the vessel edged closer, slicing through the still void with a hushed grace. "Can we establish the scale?" she asked. "Sensors report the visible portion is only 1/20th of the full arc implied by curvature calculations," the ship answered. "Conclusion, we are observing a fragment of an immense ring-shaped construct." "A ring," Morena repeated. Her dream returned, ringed structures orbiting dark worlds. Javen stood motionless beside her. This region was dismissed for centuries. How could something of this scale remain undetected? "Because we never looked," she said simply. The Resolute Fortune crept closer. The curved structure stretched across their view like a sliver of moon forged from unfamiliar alloy. Its surface displayed subtle lines carved in vast patterns, glyphs or conduits or structural reinforcements, she could not tell. They moved like ripples in metal when the scanning beams played across them, as though they were responding, aware. "No active emissions," Javen reported. "It appears dormant." "A dormant megastructure," Morena mused. "Left here by..." Her voice trailed off. Humanity had encountered other species, but none capable of constructing anything on this scale. None willing to leave abandoned relics, this enormous floating in low-visibility space. None interested in hiding traces of their engineering. This structure suggested a civilization whose capabilities dwarfed every known species, and that possibility changed everything. They stabilized in a slow orbit around the fragment. Detailed scans began streaming onto every console. Density readings fluctuated in a pattern reminiscent of heartbeat waves, as though the structure pulsed with energy buried deep under layers of dormant shell. Temperature readings refused to stabilize, oscillating with an unnatural regularity. And at the center of the visible surface lay something that looked intentionally designed to be noticed, a recessed platform, round, smooth-edged, and large enough to hold a small shuttle. Morena felt a command in that shape, a summons. The design suggested, unmistakably, a landing site. "We need to send a team," she said. "We need to be the first to set foot on this relic." Javan did not hesitate, but Morena knew he wanted to. "We will need a full hazard suite and a tethered descent route," he said, "and a secondary craft on standby." "Prepare everything," she said. "I want to go myself." "You intend to lead the team?" "Of course." Javan bowed his head. "Then I will accompany you." She smiled slightly. "I would not have accepted any other answer." The landing shuttle detached with fluid grace, its thrusters firing brief, controlled bursts to maintain position as they descended toward the surface of the megastructure fragment. The platform below, silent and waiting, shimmered faintly in reflected starlight. Morena's heartbeat matched the shuttle's gentle oscillations. She had felt anticipation before, discoveries, breakthroughs, first contact diplomatic meetings, but never like this. This felt as though she approached something that already knew she was coming. The shuttle touched down with a soft metallic kiss. The landing struts extended, absorbing the weight smoothly. The moment they made contact, the platform pulsed once with a faint glow. The interior of Morena's helmet lit with warning indicators, though no threat had manifested. "Did you see that?" Javan asked. "Yes," she said. "The moment we touched the surface, something activated. Sensors, energy flux detected, still faint, no immediate danger. Open the hatch." The hatch hissed open. Morena stepped out first, placing her boot upon the surface of the ancient structure. The metal, or whatever passed for metal among its builders, did not feel cold. It felt warm, not warm from heat, but warm as though it contained energy deep within. She looked around, scanning the curvature above her. The structure stretched endlessly beyond line of sight. Every plate had texture, shallow grooves that suggested both artistry and functionality. She felt as though she stood upon the bones of a sleeping titan. Javan moved beside her. "The air composition is measurable," he said. "Thin trace elements of something not harmful, but unfamiliar, almost like atmospheric residue. This is strange." "Strange and intentional," Morena said. "This platform was not designed for automated drones or microbots. It was built for physical presence." She walked toward the center of the platform. Her suit recorded every footfall. Her eyes remained fixed forward. When she reached the midpoint, the ground beneath her shimmered. Lines of faint light traced a pattern across the platform in concentric circles, like ripples on a pond. Javan drew his instrument reflexively. "Energy surge," he reported sharply. "Minimal, no radiation spike." "Some kind of scanning field." "A scanning field that was dormant for centuries," she replied. "Perhaps longer. Captain, we should return to the shuttle." "Not yet." The light grew brighter. Morena spread her fingers against the air as though she might feel something, and she did. A vibration, a soft hum, a presence. The air shivered. The platform stopped glowing. A single point of light remained at the center, a perfect sphere floating half a meter above the surface. "What is that?" Javan whispered. Morena stepped closer to the sphere. "A message," she said quietly. "It feels like a message." "Take care," Javan warned, but she was already approaching. The sphere expanded, not physically, but perceptually. Her ears filled with a distant resonance, like two tones blending into one. Her vision pulsed at the edges. Then the sphere touched her forehead, and her mind opened. She saw stars collapsing. She saw colossal arcs stretching across voids larger than human mapping grids. She saw vessels shaped like spires, each one longer than an entire human city. She saw beings, tall, multi-limbed, luminous, constructing a structure so vast that even the concept of distance trembled before it. A civilization older than empires, older than humanity's understanding of ancient. They built rings around dying stars. They shifted orbits of planets with gravity harnesses. They bent spacetime like cloth, and then she saw their end. A shadow sweeping across galaxies, devouring light. No form, no face, only an event, a cosmic erasure. The luminous beings fought, their arcs blazing as though entire star clusters were their weapons. They lost. The last image seared itself into Morena's consciousness. The fragment she now stood on, breaking away from a colossal ring as its parent structure exploded into radiant dust. A scattering of shards drifting for millennia. Morena gasped, stumbling backward. Javan grabbed her. Morena, what happened? She shook, breath ragged. I saw them, she whispered. The builders and their destruction. What destroyed them? She swallowed hard. I do not know, but it is something we do not have a name for. The sphere flickered again, then with a soft pulse it dissolved. Morena stared at the space it had occupied. We must return, she said. We have to tell the others. Javan helped her back toward the shuttle, though she walked on her own by the time they reached the hatch. As they ascended into orbit, Morena kept her gaze fixed on the shrinking platform below. Humanity had ventured outward believing itself small but bold. It had built its identity on audacity and adaptation. But now, Morena understood something far heavier. Humanity was not the first bold species to rise, not the first to build wonders, not the first to stare into the dark and believe it could master it. And the last ones had been destroyed by something they could not comprehend. Morena leaned back in her seat, looking out at the fragment of megastructure that had survived a cosmic cataclysm. We are not alone, she whispered, and whatever ended them may still be out there. When they returned to the Resolute Fortune, the crew gathered in a mixture of awe and unease. Morena stood before them, silent at first, letting the reality of what they had encountered settle across the room like settling dust. Then she spoke. We have found a relic older than any recorded civilization, she began. A structure built by a species far more advanced than any we have encountered. They were wiped out by something powerful enough to unmake what they built. And they left behind fragments, warnings. The faces around her were pale, determined, afraid, hopeful, everything at once. We will not flee, Morena said. We are human. We meet the unknown not with fear but with resolve. This relic is a message, and we will honor it. She paused. But understand this. We have entered a chapter of history no member of our species ever expected. We cannot leave this region unchanged. We cannot pretend we did not see what we saw. She exhaled. This is the beginning, a beginning none of us asked for, but one we must rise to meet. Outside the viewport, the periphery arc glimmered faintly, and far beyond it, something stirred in the dark. The Resolute Fortune carried an unspoken heaviness after the landing team's return. It spread through its corridors like a slow-moving current, brushing against every crew member, lingering in every intersection of shadow and light, altering the very rhythm of the vessel's pulse. Morena walked through the ship with measured steps, aware that her presence carried more weight now. She had seen something no human had ever witnessed before, a civilization so ancient and monumental that it turned all human works into fragile ornaments, and the moment of its destruction, swift and absolute. She felt that image etched into her bones, yet she refused to show weakness. The crew needed steadiness, not trembling awe. Even as the truth pressed against her lungs like a deep-sea weight, she forced her breathing to remain even and her stride calm. The command hall was already filled with key personnel when she entered. Specialists from propulsion, xenology, neurolinguistics, structural sciences, and 2 observers assigned from the Exploration Oversight Council. None of them looked prepared. They had all reviewed fragments of the data the shuttle had transmitted during the landing, although no data could fully capture the raw effect of the sphere's vision. Morena had not shared the full depth of what she saw. She had not spoken of the luminous beings, final moments, or the devouring shadow that swept away their great arcs. Those details were hers alone for now. Even Javan, beside her during descent and return, had not seen the vision directly. He had only read the physical reaction data and heard her halting description afterward. The crew needed information, but too much truth could tear the foundation of their courage. She needed to choose her words carefully. Morena took her place at the central dais, every pair of eyes fixed on her. She began without flourish, her tone firm. We stand on the edge of a discovery unlike any in the recorded history of our species. What we found is not a derelict vessel, not a fragment of lost technology from any known species, and not a natural anomaly shaped by chance. It is intentional, ancient, vast, and the work of beings whose engineering capabilities exceed ours many times over. A murmur rippled through the hall, She let it settle before continuing. This fragment, little more than a sliver of an immense ring-shaped megastructure, was part of something greater than any known Dyson configuration or stellar harness. It was not built to capture a star, nor to surround a planet. It may have encircled something else entirely. She paused, watching the shock widen across the room. It is dormant, but not dead. When we made contact, it reacted. Specialist Rilvan Torma, a xenotechnologist with pale eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, leaned forward in her seat. The energy fluctuations you transmitted from the platform surface, those pulses, were they a response to biological presence, or simply any mass interaction? I believe they were a response to life, Morena said, to intention, to consciousness. Rilvan exhaled slowly. Then the builders designed it to recognize living minds. Yes. A younger propulsion engineer raised a hand tentatively. Forgive my bluntness, Morena Vance, but if they built structures of that immense scale, why would they abandon them? And why leave them dormant? What happened to them? Morena did not answer immediately. The question stabbed at the rawest part of her memory. She had seen the answer, felt it splinter through her mind with blinding clarity. But the crew was not ready to be told that an unseen cosmic force had erased a civilization capable of shaping stars. They were explorers, not soldiers. She chose her approach carefully. Their civilization ended, she said. How or why remains unclear, but their structures persist. That alone is extraordinary. Javan stepped forward to support the transition. Our next task is to determine the extent of the remaining fragments and the nature of their technology. We must understand what has lain dormant here for millennia. Rilvan frowned slightly. You said millennia. Is that estimate based on the structural erosion patterns or something else? Both, Javan replied, though he glanced at Morena without speaking the true source of their certainty, the vision she had received. The fragment's composition shows degradation consistent with astonishing age. And the dust alignment patterns Morena reviewed earlier suggest something massive moved through this region, perhaps hundreds of human generations ago. It stands to reason the structure itself may be older than that by magnitudes. A voice rose from the rear of the hall, Tassin Meverick, an ethnographer. Ancient constructs are not new to interstellar exploration, but this one's scale is without precedent. Should we consider contacting central governance immediately? Morena took a deliberate breath. We will deliver a full report, but not yet. We lack context, and a premature transmission might trigger responses we cannot control. This discovery requires careful handling. Rushed political intervention could jeopardize our ability to study it properly. You believe governance will attempt to seize control, one of the oversight observers said. Not accusatory, simply stating what both of them already knew. I believe they will make decisions faster than reason can catch up, Morena replied, and we are the ones on site. We must gather enough knowledge to guide their eventual choices. The hall quieted. The weight of what she asked from them was enormous. To explore a relic older than their species, civilizations, without guidance, without precedent, with the specter of discovery looming behind every action. And yet, there was no hesitation in their faces. This was human nature distilled to its essence, a spark of will lit against uncharted night. Morena nodded to them. Prepare for a second expedition, a larger team. We will not attempt deeper access yet. Our goal is to survey the surface and document structural patterns. The more we learn before attempting entry, the safer we will be. Teams began dispersing, whispering among themselves as tension and excitement merged into a palpable charge. Morena remained still at the dais for several seconds. Only when most of the room had emptied did she feel her shoulders slump a fraction of an inch. Javan approached quietly. You were careful, he said. You told them enough to inspire caution, but not enough to paralyze them. Morena exhaled. I told them enough to keep them alive. Javan's gaze searched her face. What did you truly see? Morena closed her eyes briefly. Something that wiped out a civilization of giants. and you fear sharing that knowledge would break our resolve. Not break it, she said softly, twist it. She forced herself to straighten. Fear is useful in small amounts, but poison in excess. Javan nodded solemnly. Then let us gather facts before we speak of shadows. She appreciated his phrasing. He understood her better than most. They would proceed with caution, but with steady resolve. The relic waited. Hours later, Morena sat alone in the observation cradle where this had all begun. She turned down the lights and allowed the stars to flood her vision. The periphery arc lay ahead, soft, still, mysterious. The fragment hung like a sleeping crescent. Her mind replayed the visions, ancient beings moving with purpose, their luminous limbs weaving through titanic corridors, shaping matter, bending physics. They had not been monsters or gods. They had been builders, dreamers. And they had been undone by something formless, merciless, an ending so absolute that the memory alone felt corrosive. She felt the temptation to ask the stars a question. She resisted. Stars did not answer, they only witnessed. The door opened quietly. She expected Javan, but it was specialist Rilvan Torma. The woman moved with graceful certainty, her mind always several steps ahead of her feet. She approached slowly, respectfully. "May I sit?" Morena gestured wordlessly. Rilvan lowered herself into the chair beside her. "I have reviewed every scan from the surface," she said without preamble. "I found something I believe you should see privately." Morena turned. "What kind of something?" Rilvan handed over a small projection module. "A symbol buried beneath the platform." The scan frequency that detected it was not part of our standard sweep. It surfaced due to the energy reaction that occurred when you stepped forward. Morena activated the module. A pale image shimmered into form. At first, it resembled the curve of an arc, simple, elegant. But the longer she stared, the more the design revealed itself. A triple-layered loop with intersecting veins of geometric lines, a pattern both mathematical and artistic. It evoked the graceful sweep of a comet's tail combined with the precision of engineered blueprints. "What do you think it represents?" Morena asked. "I suspect it is an identifier," Rilvan said, "not a creed or decorative element. It is too symmetrical, too balanced, a design meant to convey information at a glance." "A sigil," Morena murmured, "a symbol of their kind," Rilvan nodded, "or of the faction responsible for this specific structure. Considering the scale, a single civilization may have had multiple ideological divisions or sectors." Morena traced the air near the projection without touching it. "It looks almost familiar. You have seen it." Morena hesitated, but there was no point withholding it. "In the vision the sphere showed me, it appeared above the great ring they built, shimmering like a crest." Rilvan's pupils widened. She had heard of the sphere's reaction, but did not know the details. "Then this is confirmation. Whatever communicated with you is linked to this structure's builders. It wanted you to know who they were, or who they wanted to be remembered as," Morena said softly. Rilvan watched her carefully. "Morena Vance, your reaction when the sphere made contact was not merely cognitive overload. The neuromonitors indicated a pattern consistent with deep memory influence. The sphere imprinted something, knowledge, emotion, perhaps even fragments of their experience." She leaned in slightly. "Do you feel changed?" Morena locked eyes with her. "Yes." Rilvan accepted that answer without shock or discomfort. "Then we must exercise caution. You carry something none of us do. That makes you an asset and a vulnerability. You think I'm compromised. I think you have been touched by a mind or echo that we do not yet understand," Rilvan replied. "And every first contact protocol warns of the dangers of influence, intentional or accidental." Morena remained silent for several seconds. Finally, she nodded. "Your concern is rational, but I assure you I am still myself." "I believe you," Rilvan said, "but you may not recognize gradual changes. Influence is rarely abrupt." Morena appreciated her candor, even if she disliked the implication. "I will monitor myself carefully." Rilvan stood. "And I will assist, not to police you, to support you. You carry weight none of us can yet measure." She dipped her head respectfully. "Thank you for hearing my concerns." Morena watched her leave, grateful for the woman's honesty, but unsettled nonetheless. Was she being influenced? The sphere had not felt manipulative. It had felt desperate, as though it needed her to see, to understand. It felt like a passing of responsibility, not a seizure of will, but perhaps that was influence in its most subtle form. The next hours passed in preparation for the second expedition. Equipment cases lined the loading bay, resonance mapping tools, high-resolution structural scanners, environmental sealants, biologically inert sampling modules, and compact autonomous survey drones. Morena oversaw the final checks personally. She refused to be distant from the work. Leadership, in her view, required presence, not delegation from a comfortable office. Javan approached beside a crate being sealed. Teams are assembled, all suits triple-checked, tethers reinforced. Shuttle is ready. Morena nodded. Good, this mission will be purely observational. No breaches, no attempts to penetrate inner layers. If anything reacts, we retreat immediately. Understood, Javan said, but you realize the crew is already speculating about the deeper interior. They expect that eventually we will enter. We will, she said, but not until we understand the nature of the structure more fully. As they walked toward the shuttle, a deep vibration swept through the ship. Gentle, subtle, not an alarm, more like a shift in the external gravitational field. Morena and Javan froze. The lights flickered. The ship's internal voice spoke calmly. An external mass has entered proximity, unmapped, approaching at controlled speed. Morena felt her throat tighten. Is it a vessel? Shape unknown, reflectivity irregular, no communication signals detected. Javan moved to the nearest console panel on the wall and activated a visual feed. Outside the ship, a shadow began to emerge from behind the megastructure fragment. At first, it resembled debris, jagged, broken, drifting, but then its movement clarified. It shifted with purpose, controlled. A piece of the structure? No, a vessel, an object moving independently. Morena stared at the feed, her heartbeat hammering. It was hidden behind the fragment. The object rotated slightly, and faint blue light flickered along its edges, shimmers similar to the glow produced by the sphere on the platform. But the pattern was weaker, dim, as though whatever power remained in this vessel was a fading ember. Rilvan's voice crackled through the comms. Morena, I am reading the same signature from the sphere. This vessel belongs to the builders. Morena inhaled slowly. The vessel was ancient, damaged, adrift for millennia, yet it moved toward them, a forgotten vessel from a dead civilization awakening in the presence of humans. We need to hail it, Javan said quietly. Morena nodded. Transmit a broad-spectrum harmonic call, no words, just presence. The comms officer initiated the signal. The harmonic tone pulsed through the void, gentle, steady, unmistakable. The ancient vessel paused, then it answered, not with sound, not with language, with light. A thin beam projected from its hull and wrapped across the surface of the human ship like a greeting touch, a scan, gentle and deliberate, the hallways filled with gasps. The crew watched with trepidation and wonder. Then the beam collapsed into a single point of concentrated brightness that projected directly onto Morena's chest. She froze. Morena, step back, Javan ordered, grabbing her arm, but the light did not burn, it did not push. It simply rested on her like a hand placed upon a shoulder, and then she heard it not in her ears but inside her thoughts. You saw, she staggered, gripping the rail. The voice was not a voice, but a memory echo resonating through her consciousness. You saw what remains, you must understand. The shadow that took us has awakened. Morena's breath stopped, her pulse trembled, the beam dimmed and vanished. And in that instant, the ancient vessel shuddered violently, splintering apart as if decades of deterioration finally caught up to it. Its hull cracked. Light burst outward as internal mechanisms failed. The vessel fractured into 1,000 glowing shards. Then it was gone. Silence swallowed the crew. Javan turned to Morena slowly. What did it say? Morena's voice trembled with truth she could no longer hide. The shadow that destroyed them. She looked out the window toward the distant void. It is awake again. The crew stared. The periphery arc shimmered softly in the distance, an ancient graveyard stirring, and far beyond, something moved. There was no protocol for the awakening of an extinct civilization's derelict vessel, no training module for receiving a telepathic echo older than humanity's earliest written records, and no psychological preparation for being told that the force responsible for that extinction now stirred again. Yet Morena felt no paralysis as the ancient vessel dissolved into shards of dying light. She felt something else, a calling, a gravity that seized her mind with the weight of responsibility. The crew around her reacted in a dozen overlapping ways, fear tightening faces or widening eyes, scientific hunger igniting in others, but all of them looked at Morena. She sensed their need for direction and steadied her breath. Leaders did not have the luxury of shock. Javan braced a hand on the console beside her, exhaling through clenched teeth. "That was no random encounter," he said. "It came here because of us." "Or because of what we activated," Morena replied. "The sphere's message, the platform's awakening, everything we touched may have acted as a beacon." Rilvan appeared on the bridge, her steps sharp, eyes bright with a fire that blended fear and furious curiosity. "The vessel's harmonic response matched the energy code from the sphere," she said. "It recognized you specifically. It reached for you." "I know," Morena murmured. Rilvan drew closer, lowering her voice. "What did it communicate?" Morena kept her tone even. "That I saw something meant to be seen, and that the force responsible for their extinction has awakened." Rilvan's expression tightened. "If that is true, Morena, then this region is not merely a graveyard. It is a warning tower." A tremor rolled through the ship, the reactor compensating for a subtle but pervasive external gravitational fluctuation. The entire hull creaked like a living thing bracing against cold. "What was that?" Javan asked. The ship's synthetic intelligence responded instantly. "External gravitational field is shifting. Source, the megastructure fragment. The curvature is altering slightly as though internal stabilizers are adjusting." Rilvan's eyes widened. "The fragment is awakening." A low, rhythmic vibration resonated through the bridge, like a heartbeat trapped in metal. The viewscreen zoomed toward the arc-shaped relic. Its surface shimmered with faint light, lines tracing themselves along the plates, forming pathways of luminescent geometry. The glyphs she had seen in the vision danced across the structure, faint but undeniable. "It's responding to us," Morena said. "Or to the ancient vessel's final act." Javan turned sharply. "We need to consider retreat." "No," Rilvan interrupted, her voice sharp. "Retreat invites ignorance. We have been chosen for this discovery. We cannot ignore a direct communication from the builders." "Chosen?" Javan's tone hardened. "We do not even know what we've stepped into." "We know enough," Rilvan retorted. "Enough to realize this is not random. Enough to realize it is dangerous," Javan countered. Morena raised her hand. "Both of you are right, but retreat is not an option, not now. If this force, the shadow, has awakened, we cannot hide from it. Understanding is our only survival." Javan exhaled slowly. "Then what is our next step?" "We complete the second expedition," she said. "But the objective must change." Rilvan tilted her head. "Change to what?" "We find a way inside." The statement hit the room like a gravitational shift of its own. No one spoke for several seconds. Then Javan said what the others would not. "We are not ready for that." "We will never be ready," Morena replied. "But we have been given an opening. The structure has begun to stir. If it holds answers, if it contains records, tools, knowledge, then we need them." Rilvan nodded slowly. "Agreed." Javan's jaw tightened. He did not disagree, he simply disliked the truth. "We will need full environment rigs, tether compounds, internal mapping drones, and a direct surface readout before attempting any breach." "We will prepare them," Morena said, "and we go at half-cycle dawn." As orders spread across the ship, the crew surged into motion. Fear mixed with determination, curiosity mixed with dread. Every person aboard understood the gravity of their mission now. They were not exploring the ruins of a forgotten species. They were uncovering the first pieces of a war that had spanned millennia. Morena retreated to her quarters only when she was certain every team had its assignments. Her quarters were small, intentionally sparse. She disliked distractions. But tonight the silence felt wrong, too heavy, too expectant. She activated her desk console, calling up the archived visual of the glyph Rilvan had shown her, the layered arc with geometric veins, the sigil of the builders. She studied it carefully, letting her memories drift back to the vision. When she closed her eyes, she could almost feel the luminous beings again, their minds bright and steady, their collective striving a symphony of purpose. They had built wonders without fear. They had mastered forces humanity barely understood. They had believed themselves strong, and still they fell. When she opened her eyes again, the sigil seemed to shimmer. For a heartbeat, she felt as though it was watching her back. She turned away sharply. Sleep did not come. When she drifted, her dreams became tangled. She saw flashes of the cosmic shadow, a formless wave swallowing stars like sparks in night air. She saw the builders running through corridors of blinding light. She saw their final moments. And she saw the ring fragment, the one she now orbited, screaming with silent energy as it tore itself free from a collapsing superstructure. She woke with a gasp, gripping her sheets. The room felt too small, too confined. She needed motion, focus. She left her quarters, moving through dimmed hallways toward the observation cradle. The crew slept in divided shifts, but a few personnel still passed her in the corridors, saluting or nodding quickly. They all looked tired. Still, their steps remained steady. Humans survived through stubbornness more than anything else, that unyielding spark that refused to kneel before the unknown. The observation cradle glowed with faint starlight as she entered. The massive fragment dominated the view. Its illuminated patterns had grown brighter, flowing like circuitry made from starlight. The structure was waking up more every hour. As she stared, she sensed movement behind her. She turned slightly. Rilvan stood in the doorway. "You could not sleep either." Morena shook her head. "The builders dream in my mind, and their end screams in my bones." Rilvan approached slowly. "You do not speak metaphorically." "No," Rilvan's voice softened. "Tell me everything, I will not recoil." So Morena did. She told her of the luminous beings, their arc-shaped vessels, their radiant cities stretching across cosmic distances. She described the shadow, an erasure more than an entity, sweeping like a wave across stars, dissolving matter, unraveling space-time. She told her of the builders' last moments, of the fragments flung into void as their great works collapsed. Rilvan listened without flinching, absorbing every word. When Morena finished, Rilvan said quietly, "You carry their memory, not as an intrusion, as a burden." "Why me?" Morena asked. "Why show me these things? Why reach for me?" "Because you are receptive," Rilvan said, "and perhaps because you will act where others would falter." Morena turned back to the window. "I feel as though a hand rests between my shoulder blades, pushing me forward." "Then lean into it," Rilvan said. "Fear can drown us, but purpose can carry us." Their conversation ended when the ship's artificial intelligence announced, "All expedition teams are in pre-launch readiness." Morena and Rilvan exchanged a final look. Then they walked together toward the loading bay. The second expedition team gathered at the shuttle, wearing reinforced suits lined with adaptive protective layers. Mapping drones floated in dormant clusters beside their crates. Energy tethers glowed faintly. Every person in the team looked solemn, prepared, resolute. Javan approached Morena with a final status tablet. "All systems green, we are ready." Morena nodded. "We descend." The shuttle detached and drifted toward the fragment. Its surface gleamed like metal awakening from a 1,000-year sleep. Light rippled across its plates as though recognizing their approach. The moment they touched down, the platform pulsed again, stronger this time. Light surged outward in concentric waves like a beacon. Javan's voice tightened. "That may alert whatever remains." "Good," Morena said. "Let it know we are here." The team fanned out, releasing drones that glided silently across the surface. Their beams scanned every crack, every glyph, every seam. Morena approached the center of the platform again. The memory sphere was gone, but its imprint remained deeply etched in her mind. She knelt, touching the surface gently. The floor shifted beneath her, not physically, energetically. A deep vibration thrummed through the structure. The platform split cleanly, forming a wide, circular opening. Metal petals unfurled outward with smooth, ancient grace. A vast descending ramp stretched downward, an invitation. Javan swore under his breath. The structure has opened itself. Rilvan's eyes gleamed. It is granting access. Marena stood. We enter. The ramp led into a corridor lit by soft blue glimmers pulsing like living veins. The walls curved elegantly, built from an alloy that defied analysis. The air felt charged, neither stale nor fresh, but balanced, as though preserved by mechanisms still quietly functioning across centuries. The deeper they ventured, the more Marena felt the echo of the builders. She sensed memories brushing her thoughts, flickers of past footsteps, whispers of voices shaped by light rather than sound. The team halted when the corridor opened into a cavernous chamber. It was a library, not of books or scrolls or holographic screens, but of massive crystalline pillars rising from the floor like frozen lightning. Each one pulsed with inner radiance, information encoded in patterns so complex they seemed alive. Rilvan stepped forward, breathless. These are memory archives, but unlike anything we've encountered. Each pillar likely contains knowledge measured in planetary scales. Marena approached the nearest pillar. Light rippled within it. A pattern mirrored the sigil she had seen, a tri-layered arc woven into the lattice. She reached out, not touching the pillar but feeling its resonance. And then it spoke, not to her ears, to her mind. Child of a younger fire, you come because we called, because the dark has awakened, because our end becomes your beginning. She gasped. The chamber swayed. Javan caught her arm again. Marena, what is happening? She steadied herself. The archive, it's communicating. Rilvan stepped closer. Can you understand it? A little, Marena said breathlessly. It is ancient. Its language is layered thought, but it knows us. She placed her hand gently on the surface. The pillar flared. And the truth poured into her like a great wave. Images of the builders harnessing the energy of collapsing stars. A civilization unified in purpose, not divided by empire or belief. Their discovery of something buried in deep cosmic dark, not alive, not dead, a force of unraveling, a hunger woven into physics itself, the terrifying realization that it was older than galaxies, their war against it. Their losses, the scattering of their final messages, locked inside structures like the one she stood in now, and one last isolated fragment, we could not destroy it. We could only delay its awakening. You must find the core of the first ring. Only there can the cycle be broken. The vision snapped away. Marena staggered back, breathing hard. Rilvan grabbed her shoulders. What did you see? What must we do? Marena steadied herself. Her voice was low but filled with conviction. We must find the core of the first ring. It is the only way to stop what is coming. Javan's face hardened. You are certain? Yes, Rilvan whispered. Then the builders chose humanity to finish what they could not. Marena turned toward the ramp leading deeper into the structure. No, she said, they chose me. She did not say it proudly, only truthfully. The chamber pulsed once, as though acknowledging her acceptance. The journey ahead would be brutal, terrifying, impossible by human standards, but humans were experts at defying standards. Marena lifted her head toward the glowing pillars. Show me the path, she whispered, and the archive answered. The archives did not open like doors or unfold like screens. They awakened like a mind stirring from a dream. The crystalline pillars shifted their inner geometry, their pulsing patterns flowing together until they formed a single synchronized rhythm. The chamber's glow deepened into hues of sapphire and gold, casting dancing reflections across the smooth metallic floor. Marena stood at the center of the convergence, feeling the invisible pull of the knowledge pressing against her thoughts like a rising tide waiting for her permission to cross the shore of her consciousness. She lifted her hand again. The nearest pillar brightened in response, awaiting her acceptance. The rest of the team stood behind her, their breathing shallow, their anticipation palpable. No one dared to speak. Even Javin, cautious as always, said nothing. For all his misgivings, he understood that this moment was not one he could intervene in. Rilvan stepped closer, but stayed just out of reach, her eyes wide, almost reverent. "Proceed," she whispered. Morena placed her hand against the crystal. This time the connection did not strike like lightning. It poured like a river, steadily, powerfully, undeniably. The chamber dissolved around her as her mind raced across a tapestry of memory not her own. The builder's past opened before her. She saw their world as vividly as a waking dream. Their cities, luminous and vast, hung suspended between floating platforms that rose above oceans glowing with bioluminescent life. Great arcs of radiant metal connected the platforms, forming bridges that shimmered like woven sunlight. Their bodies were tall and fluid, their forms composed of a luminescent substance that responded to emotion like water responding to wind. Every being she saw carried purpose in their movement, harmony in their gestures, and a fierce intelligence in their radiant eyes. They were a civilization united not by laws or hierarchy, but by the quiet, shared ambition to uplift all things toward brilliance. And then she saw their greatest creation, the first ring. A structure larger than worlds, built around a star whose light they harnessed as both energy source and stabilizer. It was a living system of interlocking arcs, each one a colossal work of engineering capable of bending space, manipulating gravity, and storing knowledge beyond comprehension. It was more than a station, more than a machine. It was memory, it was promise, it was sanctuary. Then came the shift. The light in the vision dimmed. The star inside the ring began to flicker unnaturally. The builders gathered in the central convergence atrium, thousands of luminous figures speaking in harmonized thought. They sensed an imbalance deep beneath the cosmic layer they had believed immutable. Something stirred in the spaces between existence, a force that moved without mass, hungered without emotion. Something they called only the shadow without form. It did not approach like an enemy. It seeped like a fault in the fabric of reality, unraveling laws the builders had relied upon since the infancy of their civilization. Stars collapsed prematurely. Space rippled where it should have remained still. Entire regions of the galaxy fell dark without sound or warning. The shadow without form was not a being to be fought. It was a fundamental negation. The builders attempted to contain it, to anchor it, to hold it in place with the combined stabilizing force of the first ring. For a time, they succeeded, but the shadow broke free. It corrupted energy fields, dissolved the luminous bodies of the builders, unmade their constructs in cascading waves of entropic decay. The first ring shattered under the strain, scattering its fragments into the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Their final act, performed by the last of their luminous minds, was to embed pieces of their knowledge inside those fragments, archives waiting for a civilization capable of deciphering them. A civilization with adaptability, resilience, and a capacity for audacity. A civilization like humanity. The vision shifted again. This time, the knowledge focused into a single, pointed truth. The shadow without form had awakened once more. The builder's last recorded thought echoed through Morena's mind. Find the core. Restore the first ring. Only then will the darkness be bound again. The flow of memory receded like a tide returning to sea. Morena gasped, stumbling backward as the chamber reformed around her. Javin caught her again, always ready. Rilvan reached for her wrists. What did you see? What must we do? Morena steadied her breathing. We must locate the core of the first ring. It was the central stabilizer of their construct. Without it, the ring cannot be restored. Rilvan's expression tightened with determination. Where is it? The archives did not show me directly, Morena said, but they gave us the first steps. She turned and pointed toward a distant corridor that had been dark upon their arrival. Now it glowed with a faint golden pulse. That path leads to the navigational matrix. It contains the coordinates we need. Javin stepped forward. Before we rush, we should evaluate our surroundings. These structures, no matter how stable they appear, are older than our recorded history. They could fail without warning. They have lasted this long, Rilvan countered. Longevity is not immortality, Javan said. We must not assume this place is safe. Marena raised her hand to silence the argument. Caution and urgency must walk together. We move forward, but we do so intelligently. They advanced through the newly lit corridor. The architecture shifted subtly as they went. The walls became smoother, edged with delicate patterns that pulsed softly under their presence. The air grew warmer, humming with energy that resonated with Morena's pulse. She could feel the archives, intent guiding them forward. They entered a chamber far larger than the first, a vast dome whose ceiling shimmered like a captured night sky. Geometric constellations glowed above, moving slowly in complex rotations. In the center of the chamber stood a circular platform surrounded by 6 towering obelisks. Each obelisk hummed with a different frequency, their tones blending into a harmonic that was both haunting and beautiful. Rilvan approached the nearest one. These must form the navigational matrix. The builders used resonance-based technology. If we can decipher the pattern before she could finish, the platform activated. Lines of light traced themselves along the floor, spiraling inward until they converged beneath Morena's feet. She froze. Javan drew his stun projector instinctively. Morena stepped back. No, Morena whispered. It is reading me. A pillar of golden light rose around her, forming a semi-transparent column. She could still see her surroundings, but they appeared distant, muted. The matrix humming intensified. Rilvan shouted something, but Morena could no longer make out the words. The builder's technology was synchronizing with her mind. Then the coordinates flooded in, not as numbers or maps or star charts, but as a 3-dimensional pattern of gravitational waves. They imprinted themselves into her thoughts with crystalline clarity. A distant region of the Perseus frontier, far beyond inhabited territory. A dead system orbiting a collapsed star. And at its center, a hidden pocket of reality stabilized by the remnant field of the first ring, a place untouched since the builder's fall. The core, the vision ended abruptly. The light column dissolved. Morena staggered, catching herself before Javan could reach her. I have the location, she said. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with the weight of knowing. We know where the core is. Rilvan's eyes filled with awe. Then we can begin restoration. Javan shook his head. We do not even know what condition the core is in, or if the shadow without form is already near. We cannot afford to wait, Morena said. If the builders could not destroy it, then neither can we, but we can rebuild what they left for us. Rilvan placed a hand on Morena's shoulder. Then humanity may be the first of its kind to attempt such a feat. They turned to leave the chamber, but the obelisks suddenly dimmed. A deep vibration shook the floor. The golden lights that had guided them flickered erratically. Javan raised his projector again. What now? The ship's synthetic intelligence voice crackled inside their helmets, distorted slightly. Unidentified energy signature approaching the fragment, pattern anomalous, not consistent with known natural or artificial phenomenon. Morena's heart tightened, the shadow without form. Rilvan swallowed. Impossible, it cannot move this quickly. It does not move through space the way we do, Morena said. It moves through structural weakness, through entropy, it follows collapse. The walls around them began to flicker, their solidity wavering like reflections on disturbed water. A low hum filled the air, not a sound, but a pressure, a wrongness pressing against their minds. Javan stepped back, gripping Morena's arm. We have overstayed. We need to leave. Now. The group sprinted down the corridor as the structure dimmed further. Light panels cracked visibly, the internal mechanisms groaning as something unseen leached energy from the environment. The shadow without form was not arriving, it was feeding. Morena could feel it, a chill in her bones, a tremor in her thoughts, like memories decaying. The platform near the surface trembled as they burst into the open. The sky above remained still, but the air crackled with static. Their shuttle's engines roared as the pilots scrambled to lift off. Rilvan shouted into her comm, "Prepare emergency ascent." The ramp beneath them split as they ran, fragments peeling away and dissolving into fine dust. The once stable metal now decayed before their eyes, turning brittle and collapsing into powder that drifted into the void. Morena leapt aboard the shuttle as the structure behind them caved inward. Javan slammed the hatch. "Take off, now!" The shuttle blasted upward, engines screaming under sudden gravitational turbulence. The fragment below them dimmed rapidly, its once radiant patterns extinguishing in sequences. The shadow without form was not physically present, it did not need to be. Its influence alone was enough to devour ancient power. As the shuttle pierced the thin haze of decaying particles, Morena stared out the viewport. The great fragment, once a bastion of knowledge and brilliance, crumbled like old paper in fireless wind. Its arches snapped, its plates split, its luminous patterns flickered and died. The archive disappeared into drifting debris. The pilot's voice cracked over the comm. "We are clear of the fragment, returning to the main vessel." Morena closed her eyes. A vague ache spread through her chest as though she had lost someone dear. Rilvan sat beside her, her own expression stricken. "The archive, it is gone." "No," Morena said softly, "not gone, passed on." She touched her temple. "The knowledge lives in me now." Javan sat across from them, staring intently. "This changes everything. We are no longer explorers. We are messengers carrying the last will of an extinct civilization." Morena opened her eyes. "No, we are more than messengers, we are inheritors." The shuttle docked with the main vessel. The crew awaited them anxiously as they stepped through the airlock. Questions erupted immediately, but Morena raised her hand. "Prepare the ship for long-range travel, set our destination to the Perseus frontier." Javan added, "Implement full defensive protocols. Whatever consumed that fragment may still linger in the region." Rilvan looked across the crew with fierce resolve. "We are embarking on humanity's most important mission." Morena faced them all. Her voice carried the weight of the Builder's knowledge and the urgency of the coming darkness. "We go to find the core of the first ring. We go to restore what the Builders began. We go because the shadow without form has awakened once more, and we will meet it with strength it has never encountered." The crew stood taller. The ship thrummed as engines activated. Humanity had stepped into a war older than their species, older than their sun, and they would not run, they would not hide, they would fight. Morena whispered inwardly to the echo of the Builders, "I will not fail you." And the faintest sensation, warmth like distant starlight, answered within her mind. The ship veered toward the distant frontier, toward the core. Toward the only hope their galaxy had left. The journey had truly begun. The journey to the Perseus frontier was unlike any mission the crew had undertaken before. Their vessel, designed for long-range exploration, resilient but never intended for cosmic conflict, moved through the emptiest stretches of the galaxy with a sense of purpose that defied its original programming. Every fused metal beam, every humming conduit, every reinforced bulkhead seemed to vibrate with an awareness of the mission that now defined them. Though their vessel had no consciousness beyond the synthetic intelligence assigned to its systems, Morena felt the subtle shift in the ship's posture. It flew not as a machine, but as a companion, as though it, too, understood what awaited them. The crew had settled into rigid work cycles since the collapse of the Builder fragment. Fear simmered beneath their determination, but none allowed it to compromise their duty. The memory of the fragment's dissolution remained sharp, a phantom presence lingering over every silent shift, every anxious glance shared in the corridors. They had witnessed the shadow without form devour structures that had survived impossible epochs. If the Builder's works were vulnerable, what chance did humanity have? Yet, even in that uncertainty, morale did not break. Humanity's greatest strength was not physical superiority, nor even ingenuity alone, but a stubborn resilience that refused to surrender simply because logic declared defeat inevitable. Morena carried that resilience like a shield. She spent her hours in the observation cradle whenever duty allowed. The cradle's transparent arc offered a panoramic view of the surrounding stars, brilliant pinpoints in an ocean of near black. The Perseus frontier lay far ahead, marked only by faint spectral anomalies captured on long-range instruments. This region was scarcely mapped and wholly uninhabited. There were no colonies, no outposts, no beacons of human presence. Only the quiet persistence of interstellar emptiness. Rilvan eventually joined her, her steps light, but her expression furrowed with thought. "You have memorized those stars by now," she murmured, folding her arms. Marena did not look away from the viewing arc. "Stars are constant, even when nothing else is." "That sounds like philosophy," Rilvan said, leaning her shoulder against the railing. "Has the archive changed the way you see the universe?" "Yes," Marena replied softly. "It showed me what harmony could look like, what unity could accomplish, and what ancient brilliance looks like when extinguished." Rilvan studied her. "You do not sound afraid." "I am," Marena said, "but fear does not define me, purpose does." Rilvan gave a faint smile. "Then humanity chose well in sending you on this mission." Marena shook her head. "I was not chosen by humanity." "Then by whom?" Rilvan asked. Marena hesitated only a moment. "By the builders, or what remains of their echoes. The archive recognized something in me, perhaps a mind open enough to receive, or a will steady enough to bear the weight." "And you do bear it," Rilvan said, "but not alone." Marena turned her gaze at last. "Thank you." Before Rilvan could respond, the ship's synthetic intelligence interrupted through the intercom. "Captain Marena, Command Analyst, Javan requests your presence on the bridge. Priority level elevated." Marena and Rilvan exchanged a tense glance and hurried from the cradle. On the bridge, Javan stood before the central display table, its surface alive with shifting spectral patterns. The rest of the bridge crew watched with a mixture of confusion and dread. "What happened?" Marena asked. Javan gestured to the display. Long-range scanners picked up an energy event at the outer edges of the Perseus frontier. "It matches the decay pattern we witnessed when the builder fragment was consumed." Rilvan's breath caught. "Is the shadow without form already there?" Javan nodded grimly. "It appears so, or at least an extension of its influence." Marena leaned over the display, eyes narrowing. The scans showed a swirling distortion, a slow widening bloom where normal physics frayed. The stars behind it dimmed as though drained of vitality. Space itself appeared thinner, stretched as if something were pulling reality outward from a central point. Javan tapped a control. "This effect is spreading along a line directly toward the dead system the archive pointed us to." Rilvan whispered, "It is hunting the core." Marena felt a cold certainty settle into her bones. "Then the core is truly the key, and the shadow without form knows it." Javan stepped closer. "We risk flying straight into its expanding wake." "We have no choice," Marena said. "We must reach the core before it does." The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood the implication. They were to plunge into a region of destabilizing spacetime, a place where light bent unnaturally and matter dissolved like breath on cold air. But there was no descent, only determination. The ship veered toward the anomaly. As it approached, the stars seemed to flicker like failing lanterns. The hull groaned under stresses that no engineer had predicted it would endure. The void ahead looked wrong, not black, but hollow, as though the universe itself had thinned. Rilvan whispered as she stared out the forward viewport, "It is like looking at the wound of a dying world." Sensors flared red. Alarms chimed. The synthetic intelligence declared, "Entering gravitational turbulence. Structural integrity holding at 91%. The turbulence worsened. The hull trembled. The ship shuddered violently as gravitational shear pulled in jagged bursts. The crew clung to their stations. "Maintain course," Marena ordered. The ship pressed forward. After agonizing minutes, they broke through the turbulence. The shaking ceased. Silence, true, eerie stillness filled the vessel. Before them lay a star system shrouded in dark haze. The central star, once brilliant, was now a collapsed remnant, dense, faintly glowing, its edges rippling with residual heat. The surrounding planets lay in shattered ruins, their remains suspended in drifting clouds of dust and stone. Javan exhaled shakily. This entire system has been dead for millennia. Rilvan squinted at the readings, and yet something remains actively faint but perceptible. Sensors show a partially stable anomaly near the collapsed star, a pocket of reality held together by the core, Morena said. The builders must have shielded it. They approached the inner system cautiously. As they drew nearer, the anomaly brightened, a spherical distortion of shimmering energy. Then something moved within the darkness. Rilvan's breath caught again. What was that? Javan froze as his console lit with warnings. Movement detected on the far side of the anomaly, large movement. The crew waited tensely as the ship's sensors struggled to filter interference from the decaying physics around them. Then the image cleared. A massive, ragged hole in space, not a void, but an absence, drifted near the anomaly. Its edges shimmered with barely perceptible motion, like torn fabric unraveling. Around it, debris dissolved into nothingness. Rilvan gasped. That is not a vessel, it is not even matter. Javan stared in horror. It is an opening, a breach, a place where the shadow without form touches this reality. Morena felt a cold force pressing against her mind, as though something was trying to understand her, to unravel her. She whispered, "It is searching." The ragged opening pulsed, expanding slightly. A low, throbbing vibration filled the hull, felt more in bone than ear. Javan gripped the console tightly. "Captain, if it fully forms, it will destabilize this entire region. The core won't stand a chance." Rilvan turned to Morena. "We must get inside the anomaly, now, before that thing reaches the core." Morena nodded. "Take us in." The ship descended toward the shimmering sphere, its engines straining against gravitational tides. Where the hull touched the anomaly's boundary, sparks of golden energy danced along the plating. Then the sphere opened, allowing them through. Inside, the distortion vanished. The laws of physics reasserted themselves. The ship stabilized, and they beheld the core. Suspended in the center of the sphere was a structure unlike anything they had seen, an immense, luminous lattice of interlocking arcs, rotating slowly. It resembled the memory pillars, but far grander. Its energy pulsed gently, maintaining the bubble of stable reality around it. Rilvan stared in awe. "The core of the first ring, it is intact," Javan murmured, "or at least functional." Morena felt the softest echo inside her mind, a whisper from the builders, distant but present. "You have come, rebuild the ring, hold back the shadow." "The core is waiting for us," she said. "We must connect with it." "I need to interface directly." Javan snapped his gaze to her. "Directly, after what the archive did to you?" "It must be me," Morena said calmly. "The builders keyed their systems to thought resonance. They attached something to me like a signature." Rilvan nodded. "If anyone can, you can." Before they could act, the entire sphere trembled. Alarms shrieked. Javan shouted, "The breach outside is expanding. The shadow's influence is penetrating the anomaly." The stable bubble shrank visibly around them. The core flickered, its arcs dimming. Morena turned to the crew. "Prepare to offload all power to the stabilizers." "Rilvan, come with me." "Javan, hold the ship steady." Javan protested. "That breach could swallow us." "Then do not let it," Morena replied. They raced toward the airlock, boarding a small shuttle designed for close-range structural access. The shuttle launched from the hangar and sped toward the core, weaving through rotating arcs that glowed faintly. Rilvan guided the shuttle with steady precision. "Energy field is weakening. We may lose the stabilizing bubble soon. Get us as close as possible," Morena said. They reached a platform extending from the central lattice, docking with a soft magnetic clank. Morena and Rilvan exited in full environment suits. The platform pulsed gently under their feet. Morena approached the glowing central conduit, a pillar of radiant geometry stretching upward. She placed her hand against it. The core responded instantly. Light rose around her, golden, brilliant, overwhelming. The geometric patterns aligned. The builder's memories surged into her mind again, but this time they felt controlled, focused. The core was guiding her, and it showed her how to restore the first ring. She saw immense arcs scattered across the galaxy, invisible to human senses but still present. Some were buried in nebulae, some drifting in void. They could be awakened through harmonic resonance if the core broadcast the correct sequence. She saw energy patterns that could slow the shadow without form, not destroy it, but bind it. She saw herself as the anchor point. Rilvan's voice cut through the connection. "Morena, the breach is expanding faster." Morena opened her eyes. The core pulsed rapidly. The sphere around them shrank as the shadow without form pressed inward like a tide of entropy. "Morena," Rilvan shouted, "we must leave." "No," Morena said. "If we leave now, the core will fall. We must complete the sequence. Help me stabilize the lattice." Rilvan hesitated, then nodded fiercely. "Tell me what to do." Morena placed her hand on the core again. Rilvan placed her hand beside hers. The core's light surged, engulfing them both. The builder's knowledge flowed into Rilvan as well, not as deeply as Morena, but enough to assist in alignment. Their combined minds synchronized with the lattice. Together, they began the restoration sequence. The breach roared outside the anomaly. The bubble shrank further. The core flickered. The shadow without form pressed closer. Morena pressed harder. "Hold on," she shouted. Rilvan screamed. The core ignited. A blast of radiant energy surged outward in all directions, pressing against the encroaching darkness. The breach shuddered violently, its edges recoiling as if burned. The bubble expanded again. The shadow without form pulled back, just slightly but enough. At the same moment, Morena felt something inside the core unlock. A deeper layer, a hidden reserve. The core whispered, "The first ring awakens. The galaxy will feel its pulse. Continue the restoration before the shadow learns." The light dimmed. Morena collapsed to her knees. Rilvan knelt beside her, trembling but alive. The breach outside stabilized, still present, still dangerous, but held at bay for now. Morena lifted her head, breathing hard. "We did it," she whispered, "but this was only the beginning." Rilvan nodded weakly. "We triggered the first pulse." "Yes," Morena said, her voice filled with quiet dread, "and the shadow will come for us with everything it has." They returned to the shuttle. The ship awaited them. The galaxy stirred. The war had begun. The pulse from the core rippled through the galaxy like the gentle crest of a tide brushing over a shoreline. It was not loud, nor violent, nor even visibly dramatic to the human eye, yet every instrument aboard their vessel reacted with sharp, simultaneous readings. Sensor screens flared with warning lights. Gravitational detectors spiked. Long-range relays chimed with cascading alerts, as though the universe itself had exhaled a note pitched just beyond hearing. And beneath all that technical information was something more subtle and infinitely more profound, a faint, warm pressure settling over the minds of sensitive crew members, a whisper of purpose, a promise of strength. Morena felt it before she even reached the main vessel's docking bay. Still aboard the shuttle, still unsteady from the intensity of interfacing with the core, she lifted her eyes toward the anomaly beyond its protective bubble. The breach left behind by the shadow without form hung at the boundary like a tear stitched roughly along its edges. For now it quivered, but did not expand. For now it waited, coiled in formless hunger, anticipating the moment it could move again. The pulse had not frightened it, but it had slowed it. A delay, time, hope. Rilvan sat slumped beside her, gasping softly through the aftershock of their shared connection. Her pupils were wide, trembling slightly as she fought to maintain focus. Morena reached over, resting a steady hand on her shoulder. "Still with me," Rilvan nodded weakly. "With you, and with everything they ever were, I can still feel echoes." Morena understood. The builders had not intended their knowledge to be passed lightly. Their ancient memories were not fragments, they were a living imprint, a lasting touch. But Rilvan's connection had been limited, a brush rather than full immersion. She would recover faster. Morena, however, felt every shifted layer of her own mind as though her thoughts had been rearranged and reforged. When the shuttle docked, the crew rushed to meet them. Javin was the first aboard, scanning Morena and Rilvan visually before speaking. "Report." Morena stood straight despite her exhaustion. "We stabilized the core, activated the first pulse. The breach outside the anomaly has recoiled." Javin exhaled slowly, disbelief and relief blending into one expression. You managed to push back the formless field. For now, Morena said. We bought time, not victory. The crew exchanged looks of mixed hope and dread. Rilvan stepped forward, her voice steadier now. The core is active, but it cannot restore the first ring alone. The builders scattered its components across the galaxy. If we do not gather them in time, the shadow without form will regain momentum. Javin grimaced. Collecting fragments the size of moons or larger across unknown sectors, that could take decades. Unless we use the core itself to locate them, Morena said. And unless we act quickly enough to amplify the second pulse before the shadow reaches full strength. Javin stiffened. Second pulse, Morena nodded. The builders engineered the first ring in stages, each pulse strengthened the last. The pulse we triggered is only the beginning. The final pulse is the one that will bind the shadow. Temporarily, but long enough for us to reshape the galaxy's defensive structures. Rilvan finished the explanation. We must gather 3 major ring fragments and 8 minor arcs, combine them with the core. Once assembled, the structure will emit the secondary pulse. Javin shook his head slowly. You are describing a construction effort on a galactic scale. We are not building the full ring, Morena said, only enough of it to re-establish its harmonic defense. Rilvan added, and the builders designed redundancy. Humanity only needs the essential arcs, not the entire ancient construct. The crew absorbed the impossible plan, and yet not one of them suggested retreat. Human stubbornness could rival cosmic forces when directed well. The ship set course toward the first indicated fragment. The first arc lay dormant inside a drifting nebula. Thin ribbons of ionized gas danced around its metallic surface, illuminating the massive structure with flickers of violet and blue. The arc hummed faintly when the ship approached, recognizing the core's pulse. Morena stood on the bridge with Rilvan and Javin at her sides, watching the structure through the forward viewport. It is huge, Javin murmured, nearly twice the size of the fragment we visited. It is asleep, Rilvan countered, but still functional. The pulse must have stirred it. Morena's hand drifted toward her temple. The core is calling it. We must anchor it and prepare for transit. The ship deployed energy tethers, trembling golden strands that attached themselves to the ark's surface. At Morena's direction, Rilvan activated resonance alignment. The ark responded, its inner channels lighting up like veins filled with starlight. Javin monitored the scan output. Structural integrity is stable. We can tow it, but slowly. Slow is acceptable, Morena said. The shadow is hindered, but it will not remain delayed for long. They remained in the nebula for just over a day, ensuring the fragment could be safely transporting. Then they set course for the second. The second arc was not dormant. They found it drifting near the edge of an unstable pulsar field, surrounded by debris from what had once been a smaller celestial body. Violent bursts of radiation crackled across its surface like angry whips of lightning. The arc rotated erratically, pulled by conflicting gravitational pulses. It has been damaged, Rilvan said, biting her lip, but it is still salvageable. Salvageable, Javin said dryly, assuming we can extract it without being pulverized by stray debris. We can, Morena said. The core taught me how. She had Rilvan tune the ship's shields to a precise frequency, one that matched the ark's inherent resonance. When the ship eased into position, the ark stabilized, ceasing its chaotic spin. The radiation parted around it like waters around a boulder. The crew stared in stunned silence as the impossible seemed effortless. Javin recovered first. That should not have been possible. Many things will seem impossible today, Morena said, except them. With the second fragment secured, they left the pulsar field before the next radiation surge could hit. 2 down, 7 to go. The third major fragment proved the most dangerous to retrieve. It drifted near the outer boundary of an abandoned star system, but something else drifted there as well. The shadow without form. Not fully manifested, not a tearing breach like before, but its presence was unmistakable. A veil of darkness shimmered across the region, distorting the light of the nearest star. Small fragments of matter dissolved as they approached the veiled boundary. "That is a scouting extension," Rilvan whispered. "A fragment of its awareness." Javin's jaw locked. "If it touches the Ark, the structure will collapse." "It will not," Morena said. "We will claim it first." Under her guidance, the ship plunged toward the Ark through tightening pockets of gravitational stress. Rilvan activated the resonance tether at the last moment, locking onto the Ark and pulling with a violent jolt that nearly destabilized their own shields. The Shadow's extension pulsed violently, expanding toward them. A low hum rattled the hull. Morena reached inward. Her mind touched the core. The core responded. A shockwave of golden energy burst from the ship, rippling outward in a narrow cone. The Shadow's extension recoiled, its veiled surface rippling like disturbed water. They escaped with the third major arc in tow. 3 major, 8 minor left. And the Shadow now knew exactly where they were. They worked relentlessly. The minor arcs were smaller but still immense, structures the size of cities, some intact, some cracked, some hidden within asteroid fields or buried in the remnants of dead planets. With each retrieval, the core's pulse strengthened. Morena sensed the rhythm building toward its next crescendo. The crew pushed themselves beyond exhaustion. Every person aboard took shifts without complaint. Every station buzzed with activity, engineers adjusting tether strength, analysts evaluating energy input, navigators charting paths that avoided the spreading zones of entropy. Humanity had never attempted a project of this magnitude. Yet they succeeded fragment after fragment, guided by a unity forged through shared purpose. When the final arc was secured, the fragments began to resonate with each other. Their alignment created a harmonic vibration that echoed through the ship. Javin stared at the instruments. "The arcs are communicating." Rilvan nodded. "Preparing for assembly." "We must return to the core," Morena said. The entire vessel trembled as the arcs shifted into formation behind them. Tether lines glowed bright as conduits of energy passed between the fragments. They returned to the anomaly. The breach was waiting. It had grown. A jagged wound the size of a small moon now hovered near the bubble. Its edges writhed, sending streaks of dark distortion across the boundary of stable reality. The Shadow without form pulsed with hunger. Javin spoke through gritted teeth. "It knows what we are doing. Then we will not fail," Morena said. The ship entered the anomaly with the fragments in tow. As they passed through the shimmering boundary, the breach slammed against it. The anomaly shuddered. The core flickered. Rilvan rushed to the window. "We must assemble the ring immediately." The arcs arranged themselves according to the core's design, moving as though guided by invisible hands. Morena and Rilvan entered the shuttle again, heading straight for the core platform. The structure glowed intensely, its arcs spinning faster. As Morena stepped onto the platform, the core activated. Light erupted from its center, connecting with each fragment. The arcs aligned one by one, forming a partial ring of spectacular beauty and terrible significance. The Shadow without form struck again. The bubble shrank sharply. The structure trembled. Rilvan screamed over the comm. "It is collapsing the anomaly. We must trigger the final pulse." Morena stepped forward and placed her hands on the conduit. The core recognized her. The builders recognized her. Light swallowed her. For a moment, she felt everything, the harmony of the ancient ring, the fear of a civilization facing its end, the determination of minds refusing annihilation. The weight of an entire galaxy depending on one moment. She pulled on the core's power. She reached into the assembled ring. She cried out, not in fear but in defiance. Now, the first ring awakened. A blast of radiant energy erupted outward, not as a wave but as a web, spreading across the galaxy through instantaneous resonance. The pulse struck the breach. The Shadow without form convulsed, recoiling violently, its veiled form collapsing inward. The wound in space sealed rapidly, folding in on itself until it vanished. The anomaly stabilized. The core dimmed. Silence, not the emptiness of space, but the peace after a storm, settled over the structure. Morena collapsed to her knees. The threat had not been destroyed, but it had been bound. The shadow was sealed beyond the breach, trapped behind layers of harmonic resonance for an age. Humanity had accomplished what the builders could not. Back aboard the ship, the crew gathered as Morena slowly recovered. The core remained stable. The arcs formed a brilliant ring inside the anomaly, a monument to two civilizations joined by fate. Rilvan sat beside Morena's bed. "We did it." Morena smiled faintly. "No, humanity did it." Javin entered, arms folded but expression softened. "So what now?" Morena sat up slowly. "We stabilize the ring, we strengthen it, and we prepare." Javin raised a brow. "Prepare for what?" "For the day the shadow without form learns to break free," she said. Rilvan nodded. "And for the day humanity becomes the builders of a new age." Morena stood, weak but resolute. "Today we save the galaxy," she said. "But tomorrow we build a future worthy of that salvation." The ship drifted beside the newly restored ring, bathing in its gentle glow. And for the first time since the builders fell, hope radiated through the stars.